All right, my lovers, thank you all for my subscribers, my viewers, the people who tune into the channel. It definitely keeps me going on those days where I'm like, oh, should I be making these videos? And you know, it's a passion to talk about cycling and just to talk about riding around town and trying to find new ways of getting out on the bike. So I thank you all. For those of you who get into my comment sections, I love you. And anyway, I wanted to talk about one topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. And this is a topic that a lot of us go through who are avid cyclers or who really like getting out and cycling. And we want to spread the love. We want to be evangelists for cycling and getting out there non-competitive style. And so this topic is about, like, how do you get your friends into cycling? Because this is a difficult topic. And this is definitely one where I want input of people who relate to this subject. And what are things that they think worked? What are things that are challenges? Just anything, any sort of insight that you can give to anybody about how to get your friends or family or whoever, your partner, whatever, into cycling. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that helped me get into cycling and some of the things that I found challenging, experience trying to get people into cycling. Now, my experience trying to get people into cycling has honestly not been super successful. It really hasn't. Now, I say that with a grain of salt. I think I'm good at getting people into cycling if they have a history of doing sports and athletics. I tend to be hardcore without knowing it at times. So to people who have grown up being relatively intense in the athletic realm, then I think I can be a good ambassador for cycling. But I'm really not good at people who don't have a history of strong physical activity or getting out there in a regular way throughout their life. So if you are better with those type of people, that's definitely, I would love input. So, you know, when you try to get a friend into cycling, or, you know, you want only to watch them give up like after just one ride. Yeah, it happens to all of us. And after years of failing to convert my friends into the bike nerds that I've become, I figured out kind of for me what makes it challenging and what made it different for me. I felt like the first real big was finding a bike that fit. The proper bike fit, until you felt it, it can be very elusive, especially if you grew up riding, you know, Walmart bikes or Toys R Us bikes. It can be a challenge to find a bike that fits you in the right way. Now, even when you find a bike that fits, you're going to have to make some adjustments on that bike to make it, air quote, perfect. My challenge was riding bikes that were too small. If you're just riding really short distances, you're just going to get to the grocery store, down the street, or you just want to go a mile or two, a bike fit is not that big a deal. But when you want to start doing real riding, when you want to share the road with cars, you want to get off the sidewalk, you want to be able to go 40 miles in a day, you're going to need a bike that fits. You won't make it if your bike doesn't fit. There's a difference between normal workout soreness and pain from a bad fit. If your friend's first experience is pure discomfort, they're probably not going to tough it out. And you have to kind of understand, when advising new people about their bikes, is really trying to look at their posture for them and just help them understand that, you know, a fitting bike is going to make a world of difference. And, you know, getting the right bike that fits isn't necessarily easy. You've either got to commit to getting a bike fit, which can cost a lot of money if you want a bike professional to fit you for a bike that fits. And also, you're probably not going to be getting a new bike. I would advise anyone who's getting into cycling is to probably go the used route, find a good deal. If you're willing to be patient enough, you can find a used bike that is a really good deal for you, that maybe you have to do a few fixes on or a few upgrades, but you know, ultimately you can find a relatively cheap used bike from someone. There's so many people who want to get into biking and then they just give it up. So the good news is there are affordable bikes out there. So it's not even necessarily the bike, the initial expense of the bike, that it's going to be your biggest deal, but it's going to be that trial and error process of just going through a bunch of bikes and really deciding, okay, this size is comfortable for me, and this makes me want to stay on the bike for a longer period of time. Every company, every gravel bike, road bikes, mountain bikes, they all use slightly different measurements. Some use inches, some use centimeters, some measure centimeters from the top tube, some measure it from the bottom bracket up to where the seat post connects. So it's hard to know from the numbers all the time of what bike would fit you. I think a good place to start is just to go to a company that does sell new bikes and look at their sizing charts. Like when I go to Poseidon or when I went to Fazari, they do have sizing charts in terms of like, for our bikes, this will probably fit you the best. And for the most part, if you're a large in one company, you're either going to be a medium or extra large in another company. So if you're a large, you're probably starting off with a large in most companies, or what is considered large is probably going to be a good idea. Or if you're a medium rider, size frame. So trying to stay within the realm. But then again, if you're not getting a bike fit, and you can also check the geometry of the bikes if the bike is modern enough on bikeinsights.com. But ultimately, you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error. And you're going to have to be willing to kind of put up with that. For the first year of your cycling, you might be like, okay, I got this bike, but it doesn't fit. Are you comfortable selling it and getting another one or exchanging it? All of those processes are not easy. So having someone to help you along the way, if you are able to help your friends along the way, just trying to find the bike that fit, and then making them understand the importance of like when they find a bike that fits, it's going to feel a lot different. It takes a little bit of work. And then even once you do find the bike that fits, configuring it so that it's super comfortable means you got to ride it, then make an adjustment if something feels weird. Then it's also, you have to be honest with, okay, my shoulders hurt a little bit, my lower back hurts a little bit. How do I adjust that to alleviate that pain? Because you shouldn't experience those pains from just regular riding. You should experience fatigue, a little bit of soreness after the ride from just general workout exertion. Once I found a bike that fit, it really just changed my love of cycling. Even though I kind of was already someone who's willing to make that sacrifice and kind of go through those paces, I can't tell you how much different it was once I found something that really fit me. Okay, so another one is the fear of the road, okay? Road cycling is terrifying for beginners. When I grew up, I rode like I said, my Toys R Us bike. I rode it on the sidewalk. It wasn't like I was going more than a couple miles down to a local place so that I could maybe ride in the parking lot or something. But the idea of sharing the road with cars, it's like a no thanks for a lot of people. So what helped me personally was riding in large groups. Those large groups minimize the road time that I felt on my own. I felt like protected by a large group. And then, after a year of riding, you kind of get a little desensitized to it. And then you know what it feels like, and you know how to kind of navigate through traffic. But you have to, and then you can sometimes forget when you're taking someone else out on a ride. And sometimes people aren't going to tell you what makes them uncomfortable. They're just going to be like, it wasn't for me. They might not even know how to articulate what makes it uncomfortable for them. So riders need reassurance, If someone, letting riders know, hey, you should have a healthy fear of cars. Cars can't always see you. Stay close in groups to be safe. And also plan your routes that keep you as far away from traffic as possible. Because even as much as I've been riding over the years, I would still, if you gave me an option to ride on a bike path away from cars or on, 100% of the time, and I'm not alone in this, most cyclists are gonna ride. We do not want to ride on the road with other cars. It's just, we love cycling so much that we're willing to put up with that. But most of us don't want to do that. So be sensitive to when you're taking people out and let them know, hey, be communicative. Like we're going to have to ride with cars for maybe like half a mile. Tell them what's coming before it comes. Here's how we stay safe. Tell them if there are hills coming. Tell them things that can help them mentally prepare. So you're kind of trying to build up confidence with your friends. And then never downplay that fear. Like if they've got nerves or they're a little nervous about it, really be sensitive to that. Because that sensitivity will go a long way in just creating the understanding that, hey, like some parts of cycling you just have to put up with, but there's going to be fun times coming. Another thing, like, and this is where I struggle the most, is like being hardcore, because it's really hard for me to gauge once I've gotten my stamina up, once I've been riding for a while. It's hard for me sometimes to remember what that feels like for other people, whether it's like you're trying to talk to someone where they're trying to ride and they're just trying to hang on to the ride. They're not at the point yet where they can talk and keep up the same pace that you're putting out. You're treating, a ride like a stage of the Tour de France or something, and you're like, let's go charge up this hill. Or you think that this hill isn't as big as it is, and they're like, wait, there's more hills after this. And so you have to be super sensitive that if the ride isn't as flat as a pancake, most people aren't really used to charging up hills. And so you don't want to skip any breaks. You don't want to shame them for weakness. Otherwise, they're just going to be done. So, slow down, go slowly, take breaks before people ask. Because a lot of the time, again, people aren't going to say what makes them uncomfortable. And as a rider, I don't want the people who are taking me out for a ride, I don't want them to feel like they're having to slow down because of me. So as that person who's taking the lead, try to take breaks before they ask for them, right? Try to encourage them to bring snacks that are the most delicious snacks, the most comforting snacks that they can bring at first. If you've got to plan a route that goes to like a fun pastry shop or a coffee shop that's nice to hang out with, associate biking with joy and not suffering. Sure, the suffering is the sacrifice that you're going to make to do some cool things on the bike, to get to some cool places, but don't make that the thing that it is. Make it about like the leisurely nature of it, the being outdoors, the finding scenic routes, being able to, have a leisurely time. Personally, I'll never go to a gym. I hate going somewhere being like, I am going to exercise. So really understand that, that is somewhat of a universal thing. Like if something is more fun and outdoorsy and like just an opportunity to get out in the sunshine, it's going to feel less like exercising than like, hey, we're going to charge up this hill and like sweat as much as we can and do the hardest things possible. It's almost like you're trying to trick someone into the physical exertion that riding already is. Encouragement matters. When someone goes up a hill, let them know, hey, that was an awesome ride. Like that's a tough hill. It was super hard for me when I first did that. You did it. So just really be as encouraging and nurturing. You might have to be overly encouraging more than don't make it obvious or like kind of silly, but be real about it. Hey, that was you just charged up a hill right there. That was awesome. So that goes again a long way. So another thing I would say is planning your route and having empathy, just in terms of, look, the routes that I go on my own, I'm going to charge up hills that go on for a while. I'm going to go up inclines. I might go into traffic that's a little bit sketchy. Your navigation skills and your planning skills, they matter a lot when taking people out. Don't throw beginners onto brutal hills with no warning. Plan scenic routes, pick flat terrain. Like I said, try to stay on bike lanes that you can and hype up their efforts. It's easy to be cynical when you're riding with your friends. So you got to fight that urge and use your energy. Use that energy that you're not riding as fast as you can, right? You're slowing down. You're going at a more mellow pace. Now you have that extra energy to really focus on being empathetic, because for me, I know it takes a lot of energy to like pump people up and not criticize and not say anything negative. So really use that extra energy that you have not exerting yourself to be a cheerleader for your friends. This is something, the next one also comes into play about not being hardcore, is that the weather matters, okay? You can't take someone out on the rainiest day or a snowy day for their first bike rides. You really have to wait for seasonal weather. If you live in a place where the weather is usually nice and you don't have to wear as many clothes and you can get on a bike with a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, ideal. We live in the Pacific Northwest, so there's just times in the year where it's not a good idea to try to get someone into riding. We tend to have to wait till the late spring, summer, early fall. That's that riding season. There's no shame in being a fair weather rider. A lot of us who end up riding all year round kind of scoff at people. Oh, everyone's just out because it's sunny. That's just how it is. Just accept that fact that a sunny day is a way better day to go on your first ride than having to fight the elements. It's hard enough riding up hills. It's hard enough being in traffic. You don't also want to be battling the rain or the snow or it being dark early or something like that. Okay, so the next one we kind of talked about a little bit, but it's that hill struggle. I've heard so many people, especially where we live in Seattle, it's a hilly place. And it's not a hilly place like in San Francisco, there are hills, but there are ways to ride around the town without going on hills. In Seattle, there's really certain places that you can't go if you are not willing to go up the hills. There's just some places that it's not going to work out if you're not willing to at least tackle some hills. There's no avoiding it. So what I would say is sometimes new riders, if you haven't been riding a lot, or again, like I said, you've been riding on your Toys R Us or Walmart bike and you've just been going around the block, you don't really understand how important gears can be and gearing can be. And so explaining that to your friends who have a geared bike is super important, and you can explain it in a simple way and say, hey, look, the cogs at the back or the cassette at the back, the biggest gear is for climbing hills. The smallest gear is for speed. And the one at the front, the cogs at the front, the chain rings, the biggest one of the chain rings is for going fast and the smallest one is for going up hills. And I would encourage people to practice their shifting, especially on the flats, so you can feel the difference in resistance. When you feel that low resistance and it's easy, super easy to pedal, that's the gearing that's made for hills. When you have that resistance, that's a high resistance and you have to put a much more effort into pedaling, that's for going downhill and on the flats. And so encouraging people when you're on the flats, hey, just go through your gear changing so that you can feel what it feels like. And that loose feeling is for when you're going up hills, and that tough feeling is for when you're going down hills on the flat. Also, you don't want to be shifting in a reactive way. You want to be kind of looking ahead at the terrain and being like, okay, there's a hill here, let's get ready to shift. And so making very deliberate decisions of shifting comes from just practicing. Okay, this is for climbing, this is for speed. And then so that when you actually get to the hills, you're shifting the right way. It's so easy to be like, do the wrong shift and go to the harder gear by accident. And so you really want to try as much as you can to practice before you actually get to the hills so you don't lose momentum, and it makes it all that much more difficult to get up. And so, these are some of the reasons like why it's hard to get into cycling, because it's not just about the bike. It's about the comfort, it's about the safety, it's about the mindset, it's about having the right gear ratios to get up to places, it's about the terrain, the weather. So if you want your friends to love biking like they do, you're going to have to try your best to meet them at where they are, to be patient, and as much as you can, make it more of a fun adventure than about exercising and exerting yourself as much as you can. Storytelling, anything, jokes, reminiscing, anything like that to just make the ride like more enjoyable rather than you definitely don't want to make it any kind of a competition. But yeah, just, make it fun, and just really try to remember what you were like when you were a beginner. For some of us, it's really difficult because it might be so long ago, but if you really can remember what it was like remembering to be a beginner, that is helpful in relaying those stories. So this is the part where I'm going to ask my friends who are watching the video, how do you feel about this? This is something I'm really curious to hear about people, because I did make another video where one of the commenters was basically talking about, I've been trying to get my friends into cycling. It's tough. And I totally relate to that. I'm like, I'm obviously, the point of this channel is trying to get to a world where we're advocating for more bike infrastructure. So for those of us who like cycling, we want to get as far away from cars as possible. And so I'd love to hear your stories. Is there anything that you found particularly helpful in trying to help people get on their way, or did you loan your friends a bike? We've gotten up to almost 500 subs on this channel, which, obviously it's not the most in the world, but it's definitely more than I thought I would be getting when I made this channel. I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subs, and then I feel like once I get there, I'll be on my way. So, any one of your subscriptions, it helps. Your comments, that's what I love the most. And thanks for riding along, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, my lovers.